All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good afternoon, Kathryn. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Kathryn Leigh Scott accepted our invitation to the show. Kathryn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. My understanding is that you grew up in Minnesota, and then you end up moving to New York to study at the American Academy of the Dramatic Arts, right? On a scholarship.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And so after that, how you end up, how did you end up getting a lead role in the, that famous classic Gothic daytime drama called Dark Shadows?
Dark Shadows. Actually, I had just graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I went in to audition at least 5 times. And then finally, I had a camera test. Very early in the morning with 2 actors. And I realized that if they had me auditioning with 2 actors, I probably got the role. So
Wow.
That was Mitch Ryan got the role of Burke Dublin. And then we started doing the show just 2 weeks later. But what was funny is that while I was a student, I was working as a Playboy bunny in the New York Club, which was I think it was the 4th Playboy Club to open. It was in the early 60s. And I think I started about a month after the club opened, and I was in training with Gloria Steinem, but it was a wonderful time. And of course, my parents knew that I was working there, and they were farm people from Minnesota. And so I called my mother to let her know that I'd got this job on this wonderful new soap opera. And my mother said, "I've never heard of it." And I said, "No, it's brand new. I'm going to be on the very first day." And she said, "Oh, well, I wouldn't give up your Playboy bunny job just yet. You never know how these things go." I ended up, we're still working as a bunny, and then for about a month before that I realized that the show was going to take off.
Good for you. And then you were in the show from 1966 to 71, right? And
That's
then
right.
And then you starred in the 1971 MGM feature, The House of Dark Shadows, right?
Yes, so they decided to do a feature film based on soap opera. I think that this has never happened before or since, but it was a very popular soap opera. And Dan just wanted to direct a feature, and he somehow managed to raise the money. And it was done at MGM, and this little movie that we did for less than $1 million was so successful that it saved MGM Studios that year. And well, they eventually went into bankruptcy, but it was a very successful film.
Wow, good for you. Good for everybody, actually. Is it true that Dan Curtis, I think I read somewhere that he claimed that he got a dream in 65 of mysterious young women on the train, and then I think he told his wife, "Hey, I have this weird dream," and then he approached a studio. I dream about this, I can put a script together for an idea, but that was it, right? There was nothing more to it.
That is absolutely my understanding. He had a dream. He was staying in a country house, in fact, the home of a friend of his, and he woke up in the middle of the night with this dream, and it was about a young woman arriving in this strange town, and essentially, his dream became the very first episode of Dark Shadows. It was very much in the vein of Jane Eyre, the governess that goes to the eccentric house on the hill, and all kinds of things happen. That was essentially the beginning of Dark Shadows.
Wow, amazing that a studio, will give you a budget or the opportunity to do something out of something so simple like in Bremen, but of course, it's more complicated than that, right? He ended up, there's a budget, you need to hire, director, write the script, and then start looking for actresses.
I think that I was spoiled because it wasn't very long after I graduated from the academy. I mean, I got my first job right away. It was a job in the theater. and I did a little bit of theater and so on, but it wasn't long before I got Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
And I guess the very first thing that I auditioned for television, I got the role, and then that led to my first feature film. I think that I was a little
Absolutely.
bit spoiled. I think I thought things happened that easily all the time, and of course they don't.
No, sometimes it's right, right. But you're a very accomplished, actress and writer, right? Did you always wanted to be an actress? You knew when you were a little girl in Minnesota, man, I go to the movies.
Yes.
Parents, they wanna
You know,
put
I've told I've told this story a few times, but when I was in second grade, I
Yeah,
wrote a play about Martha Washington. And of course, I played Martha Washington. I gave her all the good lines. Poor George didn't get,
right.
he was barely in it. But my second grade class performed it. And I realized that I think that I have always considered acting and writing to be twin careers. I enjoy both, and I think that one actually feeds the other. If you think about it, acting is a very collegial thing. You're always working with other people, and when you're writing, it's very solitary. I think that those are the two sides of me, and I'm lucky that I found acting and writing. It really works for me.
But are two different, maybe for me, different skill set to have, right? There's a lot of actresses out there, they don't write anything, and vice versa, right? A writer can never be an actor and actress, but you were able to combine both from an early age. It's amazing, right? So
I think so. I think a lot of what I know as an actor comes out in my writing. The fact that I use all my senses, that I have a skill with dialogue, all of those things, very practical things that I know from acting, really work for my writing. But then there are so many things about writing, about character development, about plotting and story and so on, that go into how I function as an actress and finding my way into a role. So really, the two things work very, very well for me. But actors come to their profession from so many different disciplines. If you think about
yeah,
Robert Redford from art and Henry Fonda from art, Burt Lancaster was in the circus, so was Cary Grant. We come from a lot of different disciplines and find our way into acting.
got it, got it. For the Dark Shadow, what was your preparation to get into the role? Because at the beginning, maybe the studio have the budget, that TV station have the budget to, let's do 5 episodes, see what happens, right? With nothing to lose. We got to, and then the 10th, okay, you have money for another 10, and then the audience start picking up, and then man, this is a gold mine, so, and then run for many years. So it's amazing, so
Yeah, I'm very lucky that as a young actress, I really got to work in a show that utilized so much of what I learned in acting school. Well, we were doing costume drama, traveling to different periods of time. Some of our stories took place in the 1700s, some in the 1800s, some in the present time, which would have been 1964. So the idea that one is working in, contemporary speech and clothing and manners and so on, but then also the very next day or sometimes in that same episode, you're time traveling back to the 1700s. So that was a marvelous experience for me. And I think that Dan, in choosing to go with an anthology format by drawing plot lines from great literature, really he set a new standard for daytime television.
yeah, wow. And I believe that you end up playing 4 roles on the series,
Four
right?
different characters,
Why,
yes.
a stupid question, why so many? I mean,
Oh, I think it wasn't planned that way, but
yeah,
I was playing Maggie Evans, the waitress
yeah,
in the diner, and then one day I showed up at the studio, and they had a clothes dummy and some lights on it, and it was on a dais that was moving around, and the clothes dummy was dressed in rags, bits of lace and linen and horribly disfigured the face. And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, it's the ghost of Josette Dupre, and that's going to be a character in the show." And I said, and they said, "What do you think it looks like?" And I said, "I think it looks like a clothes dummy." So they asked me to step in and play Josette in this little scene. And I did. My face, they put the disfigured makeup on and the rags. And I think Dan Curtis was so impressed with the way that looked. And he decided to make Maggie Evans the long lost love of the vampire. And I started playing Josette. And everybody, the network, the director, everybody told Dan that he couldn't do that it would confuse the audience. And Dan said, "Nope." He said, "I trust the audience, they'll go along with it." And they did. And all of the actors on Dark Shadows played multiple characters. So we were really functioning like a little repertory company.
Wow, it's amazing. I'm quite sure in more than one occasion when at the beginning when you were going out to dinner with your husband or whatever, your family, a lot of people would call you Maggie Aarons on the street. And up to this point,
I think people recognize me by my voice. I mean, I certainly
yeah.
look a lot like Maggie now. I've got gray hair, and it was a long time ago. But if I'm in the post office or a grocery store or something, and somebody hears my voice, I see them do that like that, and I know that they're recognizing who I am by my voice.
Good for you, man. Good for you. So it's like to be on the set of that show. It seemed that everybody, for the blooper that I have seen, that everybody you're professional. You get paid to do a job, right? You're an actor, an actress. You get paid to do what you do for a living. But how was the chemistry? How all the people got along and on the set and so on and so forth?
Oh, we were like a family because we had our own little studio and we were doing something so very different. And because the hours were long and the work was really intense, and we did the show live. So there were so many things that set us apart, and I think that we kind of banded together just for security and for just getting through. We really depended on one another. And we were very lucky. The young actors on the show were working with veteran actors who'd had a lot of stage experience. Joan Bennett was a movie star. Grayson Hall was an Academy Award nominee. We were working with really wonderful actors. So in a way, we were very much like a family. We ranged in age from, I think the youngest among us was 11 years old, and the oldest was probably close to 70. So that's a yeah.
Wow, yeah. Amazing. Every time that I hear the Dark Shadow theme music, I immediately go back to time travel to the past and remember what I have, and because the music, the main theme or the Dark Shadow, it's very well known and play everywhere in movie theater or whatever, and it brings me back to the time that was when I was living in Chile, the time that I used to go home. I think it was obviously black and white. They used to, here in the United States was around 4 p.m., but in Latin America, I think it showed at 7 8 p.m.
Well, we were translated into many different languages.
Yes.
And we played it. I remember seeing myself speaking Japanese once as Maggie Evans. So we were in a lot of different languages. And the show, I think because of the kinds of stories we told, they were classic stories. And I think that they translated very well. I mean, for a soap opera to have an international audience back then, and at our height, we had 20 million viewers. So that is really, that's phenomenal. You can't imagine that for daytime television. And there was something about the music. It was so evocative. And that was Robert Cobert, who is our composer, who just died a couple of years ago in his 90s. But he was a wonderful composer. So we were lucky all the way around.
That's good for you. And despite many letters of protest, ABC ended up canceling the show after 5 years, so in 1971 or so, right?
Yes, ABC canceled the show, and
Yeah,
but there's a very good chance now that it'll be brought back again. All these years later, 55 years later, there is a script for a new version, and I've not read the script at all, but I know that it's out there. So there's a chance that they'll bring Dark Shadows back. It would be. I think it would be good for our times. It would be interesting to see how they update it and what they do with it.
and is a possibility of you coming back among all the rest of the crew that's still alive, and
There are many of us.
unfortunately, yes, but yeah,
There are many of us, sadly, but it would be wonderful if those of us who are still working, and I'm still working as an actress, could be brought back on the show. That would be great fun.
good. So hopefully it happens. I would be the first one watching the movie, or
But you know, that was 55 years ago. One of the things that I really love about our fan base, the people that really grew up watching us, is that they have always been interested in what we've done with the rest of our careers. The
absolutely, yeah.
letters that I get, and when we do our Dark Shadows festivals and people show up for those, they love hearing us talk about Dark Shadows, but they also love hearing about the other things that we're doing, and that's wonderful. You know, none of us were typecast. None of us felt that Dark Shadows was somehow a huge cult thing, a burden that we had to overcome to do other work. So
Yeah.
we were lucky in that respect as well.
Absolutely. As I mentioned to you in the beginning, and you have done very well of yourself, because you were, maybe a little girl when you got the job there, and then you have done so many moves after that, and written many, many books. And I think later on you end up launching, hopefully I will pronounce the same correctly, the Pomegranate Press.
Oh, Pomegranate Press. Yes,
Press, right? Yeah,
pomegranate. I named it after a tree in my garden. I started Pomegranate Press back in 1985. I've
Yeah.
probably published about 75 books, all sorts, but all nonfiction entertainment books. And some of them about Dark Shadows, but also some about The Fugitive, Maverick, Charlie's Angels, a lot of the other TV shows that that became sort of cult shows. So, and I've done coffee table books and so on. I have just finished reissuing a book that my first husband, Ben Martin, who was a Time Life photographer, did about Marcel Marceau. It's
Correct, yeah.
Marceau's 100th birthday this year. He passed away in 2007, and Ben passed away in 2017. But I inherited, of course, his photographic archive, which I've now donated to the University of Texas, Austin. But I really wanted to exhibit his photographs of Marcel Marceau. The two men both have such wonderful legacies. So I mounted an exhibit at the National Arts Club with Ben's photographs of Marceau. And then I also reissued the book, Marcel Marceau, Master of Mime, which is, Ben wrote the book. He became a very close friend of Marceau. And there are at least 350 or more photographs in the book. The two men worked together very closely. Ben photographed him on tour, on stage, performing, rehearsing, off stage. So it's really a marvelous book, and it just came out about 3 weeks ago.
Correct. And then the two of you with your husband, you were living in Europe at the time, right? So
I was, and I was doing a lot of work. I did a couple of films in Paris. I worked with Alain Resnais in a film called Providence with John Gielgud and Dirk Bogarde and David Warner, and then and a couple of other things in Paris. And then I moved to London with Ben, who was stationed there with Time Life. And I did Harvey on stage in the West End with Jimmy Stewart. And I did a lot of films, a lot of television. I worked at the Bristol Old Vic, so I got a chance to do some British rep. So I was lucky to kind of spread my wings a little bit there. And among the many wonderful things, I just I enjoyed a different kind of performing. I'm so glad that I had that experience rather than going directly to Hollywood, which, so many actors do, straight from New York to Hollywood to do a movie. I had these other experiences, and when I finally ended up in Los Angeles to do a series, I had all of this other body of work behind me, which was wonderful. Good experience.
That's good for you. Have you ever looked back in your life? I'm quite sure you have, and say, man, from a little girl in Minnesota, I went to New York, and then I live here, I live there, I have done all that movie, participated all the book, and have done what you have, married two great guys in your life, and you have a very good life, So
Yes, a very good life, and it's been the life of a working actress and a working writer. I still write. I write for AARP, the Ethel. I write almost a piece a month for them. I've written a lot of novels and a lot of other books, and I've been able, because I never got I never ended up doing just one thing. I got to try so many different things. So I like variety, and I think I've been fortunate that I've been able to do all these different things.
Yeah, good for you. Let's talk a little bit about the, how does it feel to be honoring your late husband work with the artists in their New York studio. I think you're going to be traveling to California soon at the.
Yes, I am thrilled. There is a wonderful art gallery in Los Angeles, 7333 Beverly Boulevard, actually, right in the heart of Hollywood. And it's a wonderful gallery, Artplex, and they are going to exhibit Ben Martin's photographs of New York artists in their studios circa 1960. And among the artists, and I was with him when he photographed many of these people, but wonderful artists who were at the very beginning of their careers. Roy Lichtenstein, Salvador Dali, who actually was not at the beginning of his career, but Salvador Dali, Helen Frankenthaler, Marisol Escobar, Larry Rivers, Mark Rothko. Just wonderful artists, but very young. They were still in their 20s when Ben photographed them in their studios. And these are gelatin silver prints, estate prints. So they're really beautiful quality, and they're going to be shown off to great advantage at Artplex. So that exhibit will run for 6 weeks, and of course the artwork is for sale. They are limited editions, but people, I think, will be really excited to see this wonderful artwork.
Absolutely, I have seen some of the picture from the link that I had. It's unbelievable. But why only in California? Well, it's the possibility of.
Oh, it'll be other places as well. But Artplex, Artplex is located in LA, but that doesn't mean it won't go a lot of other places. Ben's work also shows. There's a gallery in Soho in New York. It's available in a lot of different places, and one can see his work on his website, which is benmartinphotojournalist.com. And I'm feeling very good about being able to extend, the knowledge, the legacy of Ben. Too often these wonderful artists, pass away, and with them goes their work. And I hate to see that happen with Ben. He photographed so many amazing things as a time-life photographer, beginning in the middle of the 20th century, all the way through until he passed away. So it's that I really love doing.
That's great for you. I'm very happy for you. I read your book, Now With You, Now Without.
Oh yes,
I've
been married. I've been
Very, very
married
well
to
written.
Yeah, I've been married to two marvelous men. Ben Martin was my first husband, and then Jeff Miller, who was the founding editor of Los Angeles Magazine, which was the first city magazine in the country. New York Magazine started 8 years later, but there are magazines, using his template in Boston, Minneapolis, Sarasota, I mean, all over the country. And he became ill around 2006 with progressive supranuclear palsy, which is one of a family of 5 prime of life diseases, including Lou Gehrig's disease there are about 6 of them. Corticobasal degeneration, multiple systems atrophy. There are several of them, and they are debilitating. They are progressive, and there is no cure. So Jeff passed away in 2011. It's 12 years ago. But again, I'm so proud of what he did, and his legacy continues. Anytime you open up a city magazine, you have it in your hand because of what Jeff designed when he was still at UCLA. I mean, he started the magazine in 1960, and it's still going strong 60 years later.
Yeah, and all the diseases that you mentioned, still, with all the research that is done, and still they cannot find a cure. And I don't know. In society, we spend so much money in useless stuff. People buy companies that are billions of dollars. I don't want to mention anybody here, but not enough money spent on research for cancer or Parkinson and so on and so forth.
I have to say that the research that they are doing, and I was a national spokesperson, a volunteer spokesperson for Cure PSP for a good number of years. And the research that they are doing into PSP is benefiting so many other diseases. I mean, Alzheimer's, they're all related in some ways. They're all brain diseases. And it's incremental, the progress, but there is progress. There is still no cure for it. And I'm always sad when I get an email from somebody who has read my book and they know that they have a limited amount of time. How can they best use that? How can they make the most of the time they have? That's sad. It's once you're diagnosed with a brain disease like that, you know that there's an end game.
And it's very difficult for your companion, boyfriend, whatever may be, because they need to sacrifice, their life to take care of you, to take care of her, or whatever, and it's very difficult.
I wrote those books because obviously I was his full-time caregiver for a number of years, and I learned a tremendous amount. And I also kept a record because with a disease like that's progressive, you're trying all different kinds of medications in case something works off-label and you benefit from it. So I kept really good records day to day. So when he passed away, I realized I had the template for the book on in my notes. So I decided to write the book because there really wasn't a book about how to care for somebody with a progressive disease. Hope is such a big part of it, and making the most of every day and doing all of the things that you can so that as somebody can continue to live a good life as long as possible. And by that, I mean a life where, you keep your functions to be able to eat, to be able to speak, to be able to move for as long as possible. And that's what we did.
Yeah, man, it's very tough. Very tough. But the book, as I say, I wrote the book. I mean, I read the book and it was very well written. And I remind me a lot of my parents that I mentioned before. Both my parents passed away some years ago. And I had a very a great upbringing in Latin America, in Chile, where I'm from, and it was a good family. And when my parents, were getting old and they passed away, my conscience is clear that with my sister that we did the best we could, right? So it's in terms of nursing, hospital, or insurance company, whatever you have, we did the best we could. And my mom, both my parents decided to pass away at home, right? So my dad say, no, this is my money, this is my home, this is my will. When I don't want to die in a hospital, when it's my time to go, bring some nurses, bring me home, and I want to die in my own bed, my own.
Yes, and I write about hospitals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because to me, it's hospice is wonderful. As a matter of fact, Jeff got such wonderful care under hospice that he had to leave hospice, which was wonderful, and then go back into it a bit later. But I realized that, Jeff was very social. He'd run a magazine. He'd had staff. He'd had a lot of interns and people that looked to him. He was like the center, and I realized that he really needed to see people. So I instituted what I called happy hour, and I let it be known to everybody that our door was open at 4:00 in the afternoon. Come over anytime, 4 to 7 after work, just drop in. And also when you recognize that for a lot of people, it's very, very difficult to see somebody that you've known who is vital and healthy, diminished. And it was very hard emotionally. So the fact that people knew that they could arrive and stay for a couple of minutes or a half hour, and that there was, a bit of food and drink, and they could just pull up a chair, it was wonderful for Jeff. But it was also, I think, really beneficial to all of his friends and family and so on, be able to socialize with him in a really comfortable way. So I did write a book about happy hour and how to make it a really pleasant, enjoyable, and may I say therapeutic.
Absolutely, yeah. And
in that condition.
Yep, and I know you need to go. So the last question is, how often you guys with the Dark Shadow former members get together, or whatever the one that are left? You do like a Zoom hours or reunion every 3 years. Let's get together in Chicago, Boston, New York, whatever. Every so often.
We used to do that. We did it every year. 1 year in New York and 1 year and next year in LA. But we've lost a good number of our cast members. There aren't that many of us who are still working, who are still able to travel and so on. So we don't do those. But we did our film, House of Dark Shadows, at Lyndhurst, which is in Tarrytown, New York. Yep. And every year for the last couple of years, and again this year, around Halloween, this year it'll be from October 20th to the 22nd, I'm going to be at Tarrytown at Lyndhurst, the Lyndhurst Estate, giving everybody a tour and doing Q&A and chatting and so if anybody wants to come to that, and I'm hoping I can maybe lure a couple of my other Dark Shadows colleagues to join me. But the best thing would be to go on my website, KathrynLeighScott.com, or to get in touch with Lyndhurst directly. It's LYNDHURST, Lyndhurst.com. And just and find out more about it. But last year was really wonderful. We had a huge turnout. The weather was beautiful, and Lyndhurst is just a beautiful estate.
Absolutely. Well, I will be attending, so you don't need to convince me. So hopefully, more members can attend, and especially the listener and viewer of this podcast will be able to benefit from the opportunity and take a couple pictures with you, or get some book signed, and all the stuff that people like. It was very nice talking to you, and we're sure Kathryn will do a follow-up interview with you again in the near future. And good luck in California with the exhibition, and stay healthy, stay positive, and it was a pleasure for me talking to you. So
Great. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.